Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Retro Wrestling. I'm your host, Gene Jackson. And this week, we're going to do another one of our popular review shows. And we're going to be reviewing an episode of Kick Ass Wrestling from June 5th, 1999. And I thought to do this, what better way to do it than to bring on a man who was there? He was a part of Kick Ass Wrestling. He can give us some insight from inside. So let's bring on our guest this week, the one and only Buster Hellraiser Johnson. Buster, how you doing, buddy?
Gene, man, what's up, dude?
Oh, not much, man. Just doing all these podcasts. I got like 3 a week I do, and then another one that we do like once a month or once every 2 weeks or however it falls. So just keeping busy, man, watching all this old wrestling, having a good time.
Man, I've been looking forward to this. We were going to do it last week. Didn't get a chance to do it. I had some electrical issues. The weather knocked all the power out around here. But I'm glad to be here, dude. KAW, you know that. I'm KAW all the way. Been looking forward to this, man, and I can't wait, man.
Absolutely. This is something that I've wanted to do for a while. I've wanted to find a way to work into some KAW. Of course, I've put over the last year or two, I've put some of it on the channel. It's gotten a lot of views, a lot of good feedback. Of course, as you know, as a YouTuber, it's kind of hard to navigate KAW on YouTube because of all the music that you guys played throughout the matches.
Right, yeah.
Get your videos flagged and pulled down and all kinds of good shit like that. But man, it was very. I remember at the time, like I was. So let's back up real quick here. Let's give a little context to everything. So you were a wrestling fan growing up. We've talked about that when me and you did an interview on your show. When
Right.
exactly did you get into the wrestling business?
1991, me and my brother started looking. Actually, I was 17. He had wanted to be in the wrestling business his whole life, but he waited on me to get. He's a little guy, Sexy Sam.
Mm-hmm.
He always wanted to be a manager, so he waited on me to get 18. So at 17, we started looking for. He started calling around, and man, there wasn't wrestling schools. You couldn't just go down the road and get trained by anybody.
Right.
It took probably 6 months to finally track down a number for Jerry Jarrett, and he finally got a hold of Jerry Jarrett, and obviously they were doing some training at the fairgrounds in Nashville. They would train every Sunday. Jerry Jarrett, man, tried to discourage us every way possible. It felt like to us
Yeah.
on the phone call, it's like, look, man, it's not what you think. Only he said realistically, only maybe 1, 2, or 3 a year ever even make it in the business that try out to be pro wrestlers. And it was just like, man, don't even come. But later on, looking at it, he's probably had 10,000 of those phone calls of guys say the same thing, show up, go through a half a class or one class, and you never see them again. So I understand now, but at the time, me and my brother both was like, man, it's like he didn't even want us to come.
Yeah.
But obviously we went. And of course, this was back when it was still 55 miles an hour, and I'm from West Helena, Arkansas, obviously Nashville. Back then, that was a 7-8 hour trip.
Wow.
We would leave at 4 o'clock in the morning on Sunday mornings. I would sleep in the back of the minivan because I'd probably been out partying all weekend and was still passed out.
Right.
So I would sleep all the way there, man. About dinner time, we'd get about an hour from Nashville, man, and that's when Chinese restaurants kind of just came in. So we'd stop, we'd eat lunch, got to make it to the fairgrounds by 2, go there, train for 2, 3 hours. It just depends on how the day was and who was there. Man, I loved it instantly, man. I'll be honest with you. When we first got there the first day, we stepped out of the car at the fairgrounds, and we were actually probably about 10 minutes late. The first trip there, we were probably 10 minutes late. So we get out of the car, and you hear the guys in there. You hear the ring bumping.
Yeah.
And so my brother's like, man, what is that, man? And I knew immediately. I was like, man, that sounded like a ring to me. We walked in. Tony Falk was there that day. Normally it was Jeff Jarrett, Tony Falk were the trainers. There was a guy named Eron Hatchett that would do some training. He had wrestled some, made it through the school. So he'd help sometime. But the first day we got there, Tony Falk was there. Of course, he come over to us, give us the handshake, and we didn't have no idea what the handshake was. He was testing us out to see if we knew anything about the business whatsoever. So
right.
I go in the bathroom to change and get my shit on to go through the class, and my brother comes in. And he said he don't even realize that's Tony Falk. He says, "Who was that guy?" And I said, "Man, that's Tony Falk." And he said, "What's the deal with that handshake he gave us?" And you know what we're thinking is a little, you know how the wrestler shake is, it's a little limp wrist type thing.
Like that boy Tony thing wasn't a gimmick.
Right. So I'm like, I don't know, but man, I was so nervous, Gene. Man, I could hear him in there bumping. So nervous, man, I was gagging in the bathroom as I was getting my workout gear and shit on.
Right.
Come out, man, went through the first class. Dude, I was in love with it before that. But, man, there wasn't no turning back after that first class for me, man. I loved it. It was something that I felt like it was almost natural to me because I'd never done it before, but I'd watched wrestling my whole life, and wrestling terminology was foreign to me, but they didn't use wrestling terminology then because there was still a lot of kayfabe then.
Right.
Matter of fact, they wouldn't even let people come in. Like, my brother's actually one of the only people that got to sit in on the class. I guess because we came so far or whatever reason. I've seen Jeff run people out of there left and right, would not let them sit in on the class. He always let my brother sit in on the class. I felt like it was just, man, stepping through those ropes the first time, you're nervous as hell, but it also just, I'd waited my whole life for that. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
And so that was 91 when we found the place. We started training 92. Late 93, late 92, I had my first match. I say match, it was a battle royal, if you can call that a match.
Well, yeah, you know.
So basically, late 92 is when I actually broke in the ring as a wrestler.
So you had been around the business for a while. When do you first remember hearing about KAW, and what was you told? What were you told about it at first? As far as it was, you first was hearing about it. It was first becoming known that KAW was a thing that was happening.
Well, originally it was AWA. Originally KAW, if I remember right, it was AWA, and of course, Motley kind of took me under his wing immediately from the first time me and Motley kind of hooked up. So I knew about AWA, and then I started hearing about this KAWA, because that's what it was at first too. When it first went to KAW, it was KAWA. And of course, I talked to Motley here and there. I was working other places. I was working regularly for Moondog in Osceola, and at that time, he was running Friday and Saturday, sometimes even a Sunday show. And I talked to Motley and Tasha here and there, and of course Danny B. Me and Danny B. Danny B's from Brownsville, but he lived in West Helena for a good while. So when we first broke in the business, we bought a wrestling ring, and hell, he'd come over to my brother's, and we trained in the backyard together some.
Nice.
I knew a little bit about it, but I'd never been to a show. I just heard the chatter, and man, my first really introduction to KAW was the TV show. The first day it came on UPN 30. That was my first introduction to it.
Was that late 98 or was that in early 99 when it hit TV?
Man, I want to say if it was late 98, it was at the very, very end. I really want to say maybe it was first of 99 that they hit, because they had been on some cable access in Memphis. And it had done real well. Of course, that was before me getting there. And I want to say might have been, if it was, like I said, if it was 98, it was late 98. I would venture to say it's probably early 99 when they hit UPN 30, man. And of course, look, that was a big deal then because there wasn't no other promotions around Memphis. USWA had died in 97, and I want to say, was it Power Pro that came next, or was it Corey Macklin's wrestling?
No, Power Pro. Randy Hell's Power Pro was next in 98. Um, and I'm trying to think of what month they started in 98, but they started around the same time. Power Pro was around for a little bit, then KAW comes around. And of course, Terry Golden told on this podcast, I'm sure he talked about it on yours as well, prior to the Hall of Fame, that, his involvement, with KAW kind of spawned from, he was supposed to be brought into the USWA and did some stuff, but then
right.
He kind of got boxed out and decided, all right, well, I'll go start my own thing. And I remember I was in the business at the time working, Corinth, Mississippi, and Bad Boys Promotions, all these little small shows around Mississippi and some into Tennessee and different places. But I was big into ECW. I had been, since probably like 95, 96. I didn't see the early part of ECW. Like,
right.
I didn't catch all like the Eddie Gilbert stuff and everything till much later when I was tape trading. I picked up, and like I say, late 95, we're already into the Raven and Dreamer and Sabu and Taz and all that good stuff. But I was a big fan of that. And so basically how it was described to me is like, hey, look, this is like a Memphis version of ECW.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. That's kind of the way I seen it too, of what it was. And man, I was hooked the first day. And I'm going to tell you right off the bat, what hooked me was when they came on with that fucking shoot to thrill. I guess I can cuss on here, right? Can I cuss?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We can't have a KAW show where we can't cuss.
Right. That shoot to thrill hit. And like I said, it was a big deal because, man, up until that point, you'd had USWA was it pretty much. You had some little outlaw companies around the perimeter in Arkansas, a few in Mississippi. Tennessee had a couple. But overall, it was USWA. So when it went out of business, it left a big void in the wrestling business around here. And then, like you said, Power Pro come on. And I think Power Pro, I'm pretty sure they were up and running before KAW popped on. I don't know if they were up and running before KAW actually started with like as AWA and KAWA, but they were definitely on TV before KAW hit UPN 30. But it was also, even though Power Pro was new, it was different, had some young guys on it. It wasn't just all the old classic guys. It was still kind of the same wrestling that we'd always had around here. You know what I'm saying? It was kind of,
it was TV5 wrestling.
Channel 5 wrestling, exactly.
And coat of paint, basically. But yeah.
I mean, in my opinion, even as a wrestler, I was bored. I was bored with just the normal style of wrestling that we were all brought up on. Perfect timing for KAW, in my opinion. Everything was right. And like you said, that's the way I looked at it. It was a southern version of ECW, a Memphis version. But I think it was just perfect timing. Grunge was big at the time. Alternative was big at the time. And this was definitely an alternative to the professional wrestling that all of us grew up on. I mean, it was totally different than the TV wrestling we had saw. Now, here's the thing. Memphis wrestling's always had wild, crazy wrestling, crazy gimmicks. But this was a little bit further than that. The music playing while the matches were going on. The anything goes. No rules at all. And I'll be honest with you, to me, that kind of hurt KAW. At first, it was a novelty. The music, the no rules, it was fresh, it was new, and it was hot. Everybody was into it. The thing about the music and no rules, when you start running house shows and you go into these towns, if the fans can't hear the bumps, the mat is the soundtrack to professional wrestling, in my opinion.
Right.
If you can't hear the bumps, it cuts out something. If there's no rules, you can't get heat.
Exactly. That's been my saying through ECW. Looking at it at the time, it was fun, it was new, it was exciting, and I liked it. I went to a couple of the New Daisy shows and loved it. I went to a couple of the Mardi Gras shows and loved it. But I mean, I was in college at the time.
Right.
That was the age I was. And then going back and looking at it years later, and like this show that we're going to watch today and discuss as we go through it, you start to look at it and the guys that are, the age we're getting to be now, and you start breaking it down exactly what you just said. If there's no rules, how do you get any heat? And if you can't get any heat, how do you tell a story? And if you can't tell a story, how do you keep people coming back? It's just not sustainable in the long run.
Right.
But we'll get to that. So the show we're doing today, we're covering the June 5th, 1999 episode of KAW. So they would have been on TV for a few months at this point.
Right.
And so, like you said, show opens with the great, AC/DC Shoot the Thrill theme song. And this show in particular, we go to the ring and David Jett is calling out all the wrestlers and the staff to ringside because we're about to do a 10-bell salute to the late Owen Hart, who had just tragically died in that accident at, the stunt gone wrong at WWF Over the Edge 1999. You were there for this, Buster. Do you remember kind of how you felt getting that news? Were you watching? I remember I was down in Starkville at Mississippi State watching the pay-per-view the night that it happened. But you remember hearing the news of the Owen Hart tragedy and what the mood in the dressing room that night was as you guys headed out for this salute.
Man, I wasn't watching the pay-per-view. I think I had worked a Sunday afternoon show, late evening show somewhere, I think. Moondog used to run some Sunday shows, and at this time I was working for him a lot still too. And I remember hearing about the news that night, man. At first, until you see it, you know how wrestling is. I mean, here, something can happen anywhere. It ain't got to be on pay-per-view. Something can happen in New York City, and even back then, before the internet, the next day, the next morning, you already know. There's chatter about it in every little wrestling dressing room everywhere. And, man, here's the deal, man. That day of the show, obviously pay-per-views back then were on Sunday. All the wrestling pay-per-views were on Sunday, so Owen Hart's thing happened on a Sunday. The Mardi Gras tapings were Wednesday night, so you had them few days there, man. But I remember getting there, and it's K.A.W., and I'm kind of new there. I've been there a couple of months. I don't even know if I had debuted on TV yet at this point, to be honest with you, because Motley had just finished up with Weed. And him and Golden was doing so. I can't say that I hadn't, but I don't know that I'd even debuted on TV yet. I'd been working most of the shows that they were doing, been doing the tapings, and here's the thing. I didn't know if KAW was even going to do anything. It's KAW, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Me personally, taking off, going to the show, did not know what to really expect about it, whether they would acknowledge it or anything. And obviously we got there, and it was a big deal. And look, at that time, we were already used to wrestlers dying, but not like this. We were used to overdoses, car wrecks, heart attacks. I mean, the epidemic of wrestlers dying young had already started several years before that. But this was different. This wasn't your normal drugs caused a car wreck, heart attack. This was totally different, man. And Owen Hart, I never met Owen Hart, and I would venture to say 90% of us guys in the dressing room, short of Sid Vicious, probably Jamie, Wolfie, Brickhouse Brown, Stephen Dunn. Truthfully, those are probably the only guys in the dressing room that maybe had ever met Owen Hart personally. But right. Man, I loved Owen. I loved Owen as a wrestler. I thought Owen was gold, man, as a wrestler. He was great at playing off of that Bret's little brother thing. And it was it was weird, man. It wasn't your normal, because KAW, the dressing room was usually upbeat, rowdy. Guys are there's extracurricular activities going on.
Yeah.
Guys were having fun, and I remember getting there, and when I got there, as soon as I walked in the door, I could tell it was a little bit different atmosphere, and then we were kind of all told that we're going to do this thing at the opening of the show, which I thought was great, man. man, what can you say about it? It truly is a tragedy. Look, I can get over people ODing. I can get over people having heart attacks. That's part of your life. If you do things to excess, shit happens sometime. But man, when you're just doing your job and being part of the show, and an accident like that happens, that kind of makes you take wrestling into perspective. I think that was the moment I realized, oh shit, man, you can die doing this shit. Anything can happen. When you're young, you're invincible. Mm-hmm. You feel like you are. So as a wrestler, I never really thought about getting hurt, never really thought about dying in the ring or something happening like that until this moment. And it changed my perspective of wrestling and just how serious some of this could be, because I wouldn't sign up for that. I mean, for him, everybody knows backstory now, he didn't even want to do it really.
Right.
But he did it because it's part of the show. Owen's a company man, did what the boss man wanted, and it's just look, I don't hold no malice to WWE or anybody. I think it was just a freak accident that happened. It could have happened to anybody that night, maybe. It didn't matter that it was Owen. Maybe if anybody else would have come out of the ceiling that night, the same thing would have happened to them. But it was a big deal, and I was so glad that KAW acknowledged it the way they did.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a classy move, and the timing of it hit me when I seen everybody get in the ring, and then David Jett said that, and then I looked at the date of the show, and I'm like, oh god, yeah, this was right after that. So yeah, I thought it was a classy move to acknowledge it the way they did. So after the intro, we cut to a promo of the Fabulous Rocker along with Lady Vixen. He tells Izzy High that he can't handle his body of the 90s, and that he certainly can't handle Vixen's. I was on quite a few shows with Rocker in these days, and it's crazy to go back and see Rocker back when he was this small, and to know he would eventually go on to fill out and become a very impressive wrestler. And these days, he's a lot different looking guy than he was back then. But he made up for his lack of size back then with a very exciting ring style. And what's your favorite memories of Rocker and Vixen from this era?
Man, I love Rocker, period. Believe this or not, like I said, here's the thing. I'd been in a battle royal or two. I'd done a few little run-ins in the wrestling business. And here's the thing. Back then, there wasn't shows every week like there are now. Outlaw shows, they come along every 2 or 3 months, sometimes 4 months. You might have 2 or 3 a year. So my actual very first real match, tag team match, was against Rocker and Big Red. Me and a guy named Rick Robinson. He was the executioner for a while. Mm-hmm. Somewhere in Arkansas. I don't even remember where. I want to say maybe it was Dice or Joyner or Luxor or somewhere like that. But man, I love Rocker. Rocker has always been, man, Rocker's a pro all the way around. And here's the thing. This was Rocker's really first shot, too. You talk about Rocker now is a main event guy.
Oh, yeah.
At this time, Rocker could work his ass off. He'd do anything for the show. Reliable, dependable. But he never been pushed really anywhere that, especially that had TV. So this was a big deal for Rocker. And it was a big deal for Vixen, too. Them together, and believe it or not, what throws me off is, they were a couple on TV, but they were a real couple there for a while in real life, Mm-hmm. And I loved Rocker, like he was talking about, the body of the 90s. That's probably my fondest memory of Rocker. Just hearing him, he throw that arm up, and that muscle, that little old P-string arm would be up there, the body of the 90s, and he'd kiss his arms, man. That's probably my most fondest memories of Rocker at the time. It put a smile on my face every fucking time he did that, no matter where it was. And Vixen, man, I met Vixen first in Gibson, Tennessee, probably in 1994. Mm-hmm. She was managing Gary Nations, which was Lord Humongous at that time. I met her in 94 in Gibson, Tennessee, and worked with her at different places throughout the years leading up to KAW. Vixen's another one, man. She went out there. She paid her dues. Tough girl.
Oh yeah.
Tough girl.
Yeah.
And you would. Here's the thing: if you know Vixen in real life and you know Rocker, man, you'd never figure these two would be together in real life. You know what I mean?
Right.
You'd never figure that. But I think she accentuated him, and I think he did the same for her. I think they were a match made in heaven at this time.
I mean, their act was great because Rocker, he made his look, his gimmick. Like people, he pops up on your TV screen if you've never seen him. You're like, look at this freaking guy. His mullet's bigger than his body.
Right.
He's flexing his muscles, saying he's got the body of the '90s, but then he's got this chick with him. So you're like, all right, he's pulled this chick. What's up with that?
Right.
And then when he gets in the ring and he can go, he's super impressive in the ring. So, together they really made that work. And then, she wasn't afraid to get in there and mix it up with whoever and, take bumps. And they were great. So I thought this was a strong way to start the show out with those two. Then we go to our first match. And it's a tag team I'm not familiar with. They're called the Click. This isn't Shawn Michaels Diesel or Hunter Hearst Helmsley, and it's not the Hollywood Click.
Right.
It's just two dudes. I'm not really sure who they are, but they're taking on Sid Vicious's POB, which what did that stand for? Like Power of Brotherhood or some such?
I think it was Pride of the Brotherhood.
Pride of Brotherhood. There you go.
I think so.
So tell us a little bit about this dynamic of like Sid shows up and he's got all these dudes with him, and they would just come out there and just wreak havoc weekly, right? For the most part.
So let's start backstage. So you're setting it, if you've ever been in Mardi Gras, you kind of know how it is. The backs, you got windows everywhere kind of overlooking this pond. It may be a golf course or some shit, I don't know. There was a body of water outside the back of it, had a big deck. So you could be in there or outside on the deck doing whatever, and all of a sudden, man, you see this fucking caravan. Just a gang. I want to say sometimes they'd be in trucks and with motorcycles. Sometimes maybe they'd be mostly motorcycles, but you could hear them coming a fucking mile away when they were on the motorcycles. So, I mean, when I say a caravan, you're talking 30 people. 30 people pull up to the back of Mardi Gras, man. Then they all pile in the dressing room or on the deck. And of course, Sid, I look, I don't know that much about Sid. Me and Sid never, our conversation consists of, hey man, what's going on? How you doing? And that's pretty much the extent of it. Right. But Sid, at that time, Sid was, it was a coup to have Sid own KAW at that time. So
this is the guy who at this point had main evented WrestleMania with Hulk Hogan.
Right,
and here
man.
He is at Mardi Gras.
I mean, Sid's been a big deal for years and years everywhere he's been. So it was a big deal to have Sid there. And I think they just kind of give Sid carte blanche to do what he wanted to, man, with all the boys. Because he'd always bring all the POB boys with him. And sometimes there might be 20. And like I said, sometimes it felt like there was 50 of these motherfuckers running around, It literally was like a gang when he pulled up. And for a little info on the Click, one of the dudes is JT Law, which later on became Chip Diver.
Okay.
The other dude was named Pharaoh. Don't know no more about him than that. That was he was at KAW for a month or so, and then I've never seen him again. So I don't have no idea no more about him. But the one dude was JT Law, which later became Chip Diver, and man. Look, man, that was, at KAW, anything goes, man. So them boys had a rough night with Sid and the POB.
They certainly did. We're going to see a little clip of some of that action right here. Let's take a look at the POB taking on the Brotherhood.
When the POB are out here, I don't either. Look out, Sid's got him. It's going to be a double choke slam on the Click. No softening up from the POB. Sid went in and took care of business himself. Sid setting up for his famous powerbomb. Has the Click high in the air. Walks him around the ring. Look at the strength on Sid. spins him around. Oh, no, this is his airplane spin. Sid is climbing the rope. Sid must think this is Lucha Libre. And now one member of the POB brings a member of the Clique over. Powerbomb through the table from the middle rope. Sid destroys another human as the POB cheer. Not a member of the Clique, not a member of the POB. He got powerbomb.
It's come to my attention that I'm supposed to tonight wrestle for the tag team championship, but my family comes to me, and my family comes first, and they say, Sid, you got too much to keep your mind on to worry about little things like the littles. And they are exactly right. I have too much on my mind because I have a very large family, and if you can see these girls, and I got a lot of taking care to do, baby, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So what we're going to do is, within time, we're going to find another tag team partner for my man K.A.W, and they will be the next tag team champs.
All right, so we cut that short before we get to a portion of the promo that could be problematic.
I was wondering, Gene. I was wondering if we was getting canceled tonight or not.
If you want to know what we're referring to, go back and find it on YouTube. This episode's on YouTube. You can watch it and see where Sid goes from there, but I'm not going to be the one to bring it to you.
Look, man, let's just say it. Sid dropped a few F-bombs during the show, man.
Yeah, and not the one you're thinking.
Right.
That would be a lot less problematic than the one that he did drop. But anyhow, right. So, you know, this was fun. If I'm not mistaken, I want to say Terry told me on the show that Sid never really even took money for his appearances in KAW, that he was just hanging out with his buddies, powerbombing folks, having a good time.
Dude, I don't know the ins and outs of that. Like I said, I was new at the time, so I don't have no idea about that. But I'm sure Golden wasn't paying all the POB boys for damn sure. So no. I would say that's probably right. Sid seemed like to me he just wanted to be there and be part of it, man. He'd come in the back, man. He'd sit down. He'd bullshit with guys, kind of hold court here and there. And I think it wouldn't surprise me at all if Sid never got a dime or never asked for a dime for it, man. And here's the thing. Some of those POB boys, K-Dog, if I'm thinking right, Kevin Fertig later on became 7. Actually, in K.A.W, he was Ecstasy, Max Cherry, several other names, and he finally stuck on 7, but then he made it to the WWE as Mordecai.
That's right.
You know, later on, he became the Vampire, Kevin Thorne.
Exactly. And now he's a real estate agent, but I think that's probably what the whole purpose was this was Sid doing a favor to his boys. He's getting them on TV. He's getting them some TV time. He's getting them some experience, and they're getting the rub of being, you know, in Sid Vicious's crew. And by all accounts, from what I hear from a lot of people, that's just the kind of guy he was. He was always more than willing to, you know, help out his friends and you know, try to further other people along. There's 100 examples of that in his career and lifetime. So yeah, when Terry told us that, I was like, man, that's super cool. Not just for him out his friends, but it's like I say, helping out K.A.W, helping out Terry, because man, what a rub to have a freaking, you know, WrestleMania main eventer, huge WCW star. I mean, at any time, Sid could walk out on a Memphis TV show, be it USWA, K.A.W, Power Pro, whatever, and then a week later, he's subject to be on Raw.
Right.
You know, he could just show up anywhere he wanted to, and he was so big and he was such a star. Who's going to turn him away?
Oh, yeah, you'd be stupid to tell Sid no. I mean, it's just simple as that.
We ain't got nothing for you, pal.
Yeah, really. How you not got nothing for this giant dude, man? He looks, I mean, that was Sid he was still in his prime pretty good at this time, too. It wasn't later on Sid, man. He was still in his prime. And hell, several of those boys, not just Kevin Fertig, if I'm thinking right, Mickey Ray and Ron Rage was part of the POV, I'm thinking. There was a couple of other guys that was part of that POV that went on into wrestling and worked around this area. I think there's one of them that's still working now, maybe doing some stuff for Memphis wrestling. If I'm not mistaken, I don't want to call a name, but I think that one of the POV boys may be one of the Secret Service guys on Memphis wrestling. I could be wrong about that, Gene, but a lot of those guys, several of those guys went on to have careers in the wrestling business.
That's pretty cool. So from there, we hear from David Jett. So let's take a moment. There's David Jett. He was our, if we're comparing this to ECW, he's our Joey Styles. He's out here. He's doing the announcing alone. And we'll hear in a minute. We'll kind of talk about a promo he cuts here. But what was your impressions of David Jett? What kind of dude was he to you?
Man, I hated this motherfucker when I first went to work at K.A.W.
Oh, yeah?
You know, look, David Jett is got the driest and the wettest sense of humor all at the same fucking time, Gene. Dude, I swear, man, he was just a prick. I felt like that. It took me probably about 3 months for me and Jett to click, man. And once we did, man, I fucking love David Jett to this day. He is one of my most favorite people in the whole world. Once you kind of get his sense of humor and you realize the type of person he is, man, David Jett, I love him now, but I couldn't stand his ass. I hated his ass the first couple months of K.A.W., man. He was like a prick.
And behind the scenes, he was helping out with a lot of different aspects, right? He wore a few different hats besides just being the announcer on TV, from what I understand, right? Creatively and different things.
Right. I'm pretty sure him and Golden, he had a lot to do with creative. Now, at this time, when I first went to work for K.A.W., Golden, they were paying a production company to produce the show. I can't remember who it was. I want to say the dude's name was Bob something. I could be wrong about that, but Jett, I don't think he was doing the actual production of the show at this time. But later on, once Golden and them, they eventually bought all their own equipment and cut the TV production guy out. And that's where Jett kind of come in, and I guess he learned. Jett already had a little bit of TV experience from what I understand. But I think, man, he kind of learned how to do all that shit by trial and error, man. That's
what Terry said on this show. He said that, Jett came in and he, like you said, he had a little knowledge, but not a whole lot. And he just, he's like, hey, we need this, we need that. They start getting this equipment and he's, learning how to use it as they're producing shows, But, Terry said that was so huge as far as cutting cost and making it more affordable to produce these shows, to do it themselves, rather than a real game changer as far as K.A.W. was concerned, and made David an invaluable part of the show beyond just being the announcer. And I'd love to get him on here sometime and talk to him as well. But so at this point, David's talking about the footage that was shown last week when Kevin Christian, a.k.a. Kevin Lawler, showed up.
Right.
AEW show. I mentioned it to Terry Golden when he was on the show, and he got a good laugh. I remember it. And he said that Kevin didn't know exactly what was going to happen out there because they weren't entirely sure what was going to happen. Guys in the back were kind of kicking it around. This wasn't a part of this episode, but I went and pulled the clip just because since we're here and they're mentioning it, I feel like this is as good a time as any. Let's take a look at the clip of when Kevin was there at K.A.W. and then I want to hear your perspective of how that all went down that night and how the boys viewed all this. So let's check this out.
What, you little son-of-a bitch? I don't know where your little pants are. You're wearing a dog on Channel 5. But you need to go put it on. Because this is kick-ass wrestling. And you either have to be a real man or a real man. And neither one.
I'm out here at the back of Mardi Gras with Terry Golden. And what are your thoughts on Kevin Lawler?
Let me tell you what I think. You know, KAW is legit, people. Let me explain something to you. Everybody wants to piss and moan and complain and tell everybody how great they are. You know what? KAW stands for kick-ass wrestling. And anytime a Lawler, anybody wants to show up and stick their nose in kick-ass wrestling, you're going to get the first part of that. You're going to get your ass kicked. I don't care. Maybe the rest of the Lawler family didn't have the stones to walk in the building and take care of their own business. So they had to send their punk-ass son or their punk-ass brother. Well, Kevin Lawler, let me give you a message. This is kick-ass wrestling. We don't have any kings. We don't have any superstars. We don't have any fabs. And by God, we don't want any of the three. We don't need anybody over 50-year-old in the ring because they can't cut it. You can't cut it. You've been a joke all your life. That's why you put a green hood on your head and a padded suit, and your daddy doesn't even acknowledge you. And your brother sits in the gym with a syringe.
Terry,
you know what I'm fixing to say?
Terry.
No, I'm not done. I'm not done. Your brother doesn't like you. Your daddy can't stand you. You can't get a job, so you show up here, interrupt our show, think you're going to make a name for yourself? Well, let me give you some advice. Let me make you a promise. You want to make a name for yourself? Why don't you come back? Why don't you bring your daddy or your brother? Either one. And I guarantee you that I personally will stomp their ass. And that's just about all I got to say about the Lawlers and the rest of the fans.
Terry, let me just cut you off there, if I may. And
Man.
So what do you remember about Kevin Lawler showing up at a KAW show?
Dude, I remember I couldn't believe it. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I think it was, like, I 100% believe it was 80% shoot, 20% work, honestly. I don't think Kevin knew what to expect. And here's the thing. You got to give Kevin a lot of fucking guts to walk in that locker room and in that arena with all these guys not really knowing, because this was still, hey, people don't believe it, but man, this was still when shit could happen in the wrestling business. Shit could go from a work to a fight really, really fast and without warning. And I kind of think that's kind of what happened. If you've seen the stuff in the ring, man, it wasn't like planned out spots, man. It seemed real. It was a lot of reality based, going back and forth with Kevin and Tasha. And even Penguin sitting there with the sign looking like Paul Heyman, got the hat on and stuff. You felt like there was something going on here. And this wasn't a time when wrestling companies worked together. Mm-hmm. So anybody in Memphis knew that, hey, this was some serious shit going on right here. Golden's promo. You wasn't used to hearing that kind of promo laid out that way anywhere in Memphis, Tennessee on television at the time. No. Dude, look, I still to this day don't 100% know whether it was most work or most shoot, honestly. And that's the honest opinion, man.
I didn't press Terry on it because when he came on the show, we were promoting the Hall of Fame show and we're about a week out. And so when I mentioned it, Terry started laughing. He said, you trying to stir shit up with me and Kevin right before this Hall of Fame thing? And I said, no, man, I'm not. I said, but we couldn't talk about it KAW and not mention this.
Right.
And he just said that, like, no, man, I don't know if Kevin really knew what was coming when he went out there. He said, well, I don't really know that anybody did. Like, there wasn't really a plan. There was just people knew that Kevin was going to go out there, and a few different people were saying, like, I want to go do this or I want to do that. And Tasha ended up out there. But I'm just curious. I wish now, if I have Terry on here again at some point, and hopefully I will, I would just like to know number one, what the intent was for Kevin even showing up there, and what the intent, like, what did he say or what did they say as far as, like, why the fuck he was in the ring with a microphone? Like, what was that even supposed to be? I mean, he didn't stick around. He didn't, as far as I know, they didn't make an angle of that, did they? He wasn't back again. So what did he think he was there to do, and what brought him there to start with? Was he on the outs with Jerry at the time, I guess, I'm assuming?
Dude, from vaguely what I remember, I think that had a lot to do with it, something to do with, I think that obviously they had to have some kind of conversation for Kevin to even show up. And, you know, if he'd have just showed up out of nowhere and they didn't want him in the ring, he'd have never made it to the fucking ring.
Oh,
It's simple as that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I believe 100% like Golden said, because, man, a lot of times at KAW, I mean, we get our finishes, but everything else was just kind of, unless it was a pivotal point that we needed to do for an angle or something for one of the stories, it was free. It was kind of free form. Guys kind of had the freedom to go out there and do whatever. And I feel like that Kevin came in there. I'm sure he was leery, because I would have been. I mean, you're like walking into the lion's den, especially at this time. And I'll say this: if it was a work, I don't think that it turned out quite like it may have been planned. I think it got a little more real once it got in the ring. Once everybody got out there, because you got to understand, there was a lot of, Terry Golden had said a lot of bad things about Jerry Lawler, Brian Christopher, the Lawler family, and we all know that. I mean, let's be honest, Jerry Lawler really, very, especially at this time, barely acknowledged that either one of these people were his kids. You know?
Oh, he didn't. He flat out didn't. I don't believe, or maybe by now, maybe Heyman had already.
I think it had been out a little bit, but it wasn't common knowledge like it is now, where people knew it was a fact, man. And you know,
it wasn't common knowledge that he was in that padded suit as the Yellow Jacket. I remember as a fan watching this episode as it aired originally, and I popped when Tasha said, you know, put your padded suit on like when you do jobs on Channel 5. I was like I said, I was in the business at that point for about 2 years, and I was like, holy shit. Like, did she really just say that? And I mean, to me, that was just wild. But knowing KAW's reputation, it gave me a lot of respect for Kevin, because like you said, just the balls to walk in that building, much less walk out on their TV, not knowing what the hell could happen. I mean, I just have to assume that maybe they were told, like, hey, we're going to give you a live mic. You can go out there. You can shoot on your dad. You can shit on Power Pro, Randy Hales, whatever, you know, whoever you're mad at.
Right.
And then once he got out there, before he could shit on anybody, they turned it around and shit on him and his dad and everybody in the process. And, you know, it was what it was. But like I said, I gained a lot of respect for Kevin Lawler just to have the balls to show up at that show, because, I mean, they could have went out there and set a table on fire and put his ass through it and been like, that's what we do to Memphis, you know, the Power Pro guys or whatever, you know, just to make an example out of him. And what could he have done about it? You know, absolutely nothing.
At this time, man, don't think at this time, especially, and even before this, it ain't unheard of for wrestlers or a company or somebody to sucker one guy in somewhere, get him out in the ring, and then beat the shit out of him for real. I mean, it ain't unheard of. It ain't something that happened all the time. But you know, Kevin could have been promised, we're going to do this, and then once he got him out there and they were out in front of the crowd, all that may have changed. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know the particulars whatsoever, but I have to assume Kevin had to have some kind of assurances to walk in the building. You know, had to have. There had to have been some sort of idea of, hey, this is kind of what we're going to do. For him to even be there, had to have. But even with that, you got to give Kevin credit for the guts, because like I said, they could have been lying to him from the get-go just to get him over there, just to beat the shit out of him on TV, to send that message back to Lawler and Brian.
Absolutely.
You know, it was
to me as a fan, this is a key moment where KAW, this one of those moments that establishes that, oh shit, anything can happen on this show, and this, you know, this KAW Outlaws reputation that they were wanting to build for themselves, like, you know, hey, we're the Outlaws of Memphis. We do what we want to do. We're not going to take no shit off these TV5 guys. We're our own thing. And you know, what more of a statement can you make than fucking with the King's son on Memphis TV? You know, that's a big, bold statement right there. So to me, this was a pivotal moment in KAW history right here. So that's why I wanted to go ahead and show it. Now, there's another little Terry Golden promo here. Let's check this out real quick.
I think this is one of Golden's best promos, dude. I honestly, when I listened to it, I skimmed back over the show earlier today just to be on topic with everything. I 100% believe this is one of Terry Golden's greatest promos right here.
Me too, and that's why I clipped it and wanted to include it, because a lot of people are just going to be watching this, probably have no knowledge of KAW. Like, I did a watch along for my Patreon for a buddy of mine that, you know, had wrestled like, 15 years in Alabama, but had never heard of KAW, didn't have any idea. So we watched a bunch of KAW matches, and he was impressed with it. And so one of the matches on there was Terry Golden, and he's like, so that guy's the owner. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, so he was in the main angles. I'm like, yeah, but dude, you gotta understand, like, he was like the Tommy Dreamer, I said, these fucking promos, I was like, he was like Tommy Dreamer and Paul Heyman rolled into one, because like he could get in the ring, he could wrestle, but he could do these promos that just rallied the fans, the wrestlers, everybody. Like, you want to see this guy just take down all the other promotions in Memphis, because
Right.
you just felt like, oh my God, this is it's a fucking revolution. We're taking over wrestling. You're ready to go fight alongside this dude. You're not even involved, So yeah, check out this promo, folks, and let us know in the comments what you think about it.
Okay, I'm here with the current KAW heavyweight champion, and in my opinion, if you're the top guy in KAW, that makes you the top guy in Memphis wrestling. Terry, last week, we heard a lot. You were talking about that Kevin Christian footage.
Yeah, hold on. You know what?
Here we go.
Now there you go. There you go. Jumping ship. Don't jump ship, son, because the other one's sinking. Kevin Christian, my ass, her name is Kevin Christian Lawler. That's the key word. It's Lawler. Showed up in Kick-Ass and got his ass kicked. And I asked you to challenge last week, Jet. What happened? I said, anybody, King, Superstar, Fabs, Jokes, Jerks, Jackasses, anybody show up and kick ass, and I'll take you on one-on-one regardless who you are. Have you seen anybody?
Nobody.
No, you have not. No, you have not, and no, you won't. You know why? Because nobody in Memphis has any stones. Nobody has any guts. Nobody has any pride. You want to talk about old-time heritage? Come to Kick-Ass, and I will stomp old-time out your ass. Goodbye.
Dude, man, let me tell you something. Golden, that right there, I feel like that promo, that attitude from Terry Golden is the essence of what KAW was all about right there, all wrapped up in that 30, 60 seconds, however long it was, man.
Absolutely. Yeah, 60 seconds, and he completely put a bow on the whole Kevin Lawler thing and basically gave you the KAW mission statement, like you say right there. If you wanted to sum up, like, well, what was KAW? Like, well, if you want it summed up in a promo, here's this promo. If you want it summed up in matches, we have to show you a few different clips. But from there, David Jett goes on to cut a promo about the other promotions in Memphis and nepotism and basically declaring war on the other wrestling promotions, or promotion, as it were, in Memphis. And again, this feels very ECW-like, very similar to the Joey Styles rants against WWF and ECW in the year prior. And at the time, I liked it. Going back and looking at it now, I'm just like, okay, I get it in the moment. Now, looking at it now, you're gonna look at it as like, what's this fucking announcer like putting him? What's he going into business for himself here? Like, why are we putting the heat on the announcer? So I don't think it really holds up, and I don't really think there's really a place for it in present day wrestling for the announcer to all of a sudden start cutting a promo. I don't know. You may feel differently. Like I say, Joey Styles got away with this kind of shit, and it felt perfectly in '99 watching this. I was perfectly fine with it. When I go back and watch it now, I'm like, what the fuck are we doing?
Look, we had a referee who drank beer while he was refereeing matches. KAW's whole idea was just chaos. Everything chaos. This is where the outlaws, and even our fucking announcer is an outlaw.
Right.
Anything. I feel like it was more of I feel like it was by design of, hey, really, anything can happen. You just seen us beat the shit out of Kevin Lawler. Our hype man was in the ring with a sign going at it with Kevin Lawler. Tasha was in there, Bitty Little. And now the announcer, he's laying it out for everybody else in and around Memphis, Tennessee. In the moment, it felt great, dude. I mean, I can't lie. In the moment, it was it was reality-based wrestling. Honestly, it was, because, look, Jerry Jarrett, their biggest, best angles were always personal with reality-based wrestling. And I think that's what Golden kind of understood too, because, hey, that promo was mild to some of the other things that Golden had said about the King, said about Brian, said about a lot of people from over there. And I just feel like it's David Jett, man. I feel like it was just anything can happen. You know, if you watch some of the stuff, Golden said the biggest influences for KAW were Deliverance and Pulp Fiction. And KAW is kind of when you watch it, it's the first time I ever watched Pulp Fiction, it took me a time. I had to watch it 2 or 3 times because it was.
I hated it the first time I saw it.
Dude, I was the same way. I was like, what
about?
The fuck is going on here?
People had pumped it up and like, oh, this is the greatest thing. You're going to love it. And I just sat there and was everyone's like, I hated that. What the crap was that? And like you said, maybe 2-3 times after watching it, I appreciated it. And then I got it.
Well, I don't think I couldn't understand it. It was a movie coming from a different direction than kind of movies had ever came from before that we were used to. Kind of the same thing here, man. I feel like it was just 1 minute's one place, the next minute's over here. It could be up in the sky. And you talk about Golden being the main guy. You know, if you really think about it, they did a great job of, even if Golden was in the main angle on the show, it didn't feel like that. It felt like everybody that was doing something on the show, it kind of almost felt like everything was equally important. It took them all to kind of create KAW and create the show. And I thought that was great about Golden because, look, you know as well as I do, guys start their own promotions basically a lot of times just to put themselves over. I mean, honestly.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And Golden didn't do it quite that way, man. Golden took a lot of ass whoopings. Golden's got charisma. I mean, honestly, he got charisma. Like you said, I never really thought about him as the Tommy Dreamer, but you're right. He was KAW's Tommy Dreamer in essence, man.
To me, he was like Tommy Dreamer in the ring, but Heyman on the mic. You know, he was far better than Dreamer, in my opinion, on promos. But he would take those ass whoopings like Dreamer. You know, and you know, we talked about earlier, like, well, how do you get sympathy or how do you get heat? He managed to do that. You know, he could fire up in these promos and get hot, but when it's time for somebody to get the best of him, you know, he would take those ass whoopings to the next match. And so, to me, that's what stood out about him. And you know, if somebody wanted to argue, I'd say, hey, watch 10 episodes of KAW and you tell me who's a better lead babyface than Terry Golden.
Right.
There's nobody else that you could justify picking. He's the guy. He's what represents the company, not just because he owns it, because people didn't know that. Fans didn't know that. Only people from behind the scenes knew that kind of stuff. But
we'll return after these messages.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling, the podcast that's based on the old school, but can still help you find the good stuff from today. Jimmy Street and the Plastic Chic, Jared, are the undisputed tag team champions of the wrestling podcast world. From thought-provoking topics to superstar interviews to action figure expertise. This team does it all. And all they ask is, give me back my pro wrestling. Every other Thursday, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey everybody, Gene Jackson here, inviting you to check out the Retro Wrestling Review, where each week I'm joined by some great co-hosts who help me review classic episodes of USWA Championship Wrestling, and right now we are doing week-by-week reviews of 1993. But we don't just do reviews, sometimes we get a chance to interview some of the people who were there and lived it, plus do watch-alongs. It's a lot of fun, so check out new episodes that drop every Wednesday at Wrestlecopia.com. And to find links to everything associated to the podcast, you can go to uswapodcast.com.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here, curator of the Wrestlecopia Podcast Network, inviting you guys to listen to many of the programs here as part of the Wrestlecopia brand, including, but not limited to, the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF project. You can also listen to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories, whether it's Jamie Ward with Georgia 81, Roman Gomez with the UWF in 1986, or Gene Jackson covering Memphis in 85. 3 projects going on right now over there at Regional Wrestling. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. Bob goes back in time each and every week, covering not just his career, but countless stories and interactions with hundreds of wrestling names spanning his 2 decades in the business. But that's not all. You can also check out the Pro Wrestling Academy with the professor of Puroresu, Mr. Dan Ginnity. Dan and I go back in time and cover the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the Wrestlecopia Podcast Network, located over at Wrestlecopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met, from Apple to Spotify, Pocket Cast, and beyond. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to our social media guys for all the latest goings on here at the Wrestlecopia Podcast Network. Plus, I'm constantly adding old school video clips and pictures from throughout wrestling history. You can follow us over on X, formerly Twitter, at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. And why not subscribe to YouTube.com/Wrestling Grenade. So if you're looking to support that next up and coming podcast brand, please consider making it Wrestlecopia.
So from there, David Jet brings out Motley Cruz and Tasha on screen. Tasha tells Jet to shut up. Motley tells Jet not to address Tasha. So Jet makes fun of Motley for getting set on fire by Terry Gold the previous week. Here's a look at them there on camera. And they tease a mixed tag match. And Tasha informs everyone that she's a sadomasochist. Definition of the term, just in case you didn't know. And Motley closes up by pointing Golden he's about to bust his ass. So, at the time when I first started watching this, I had heard of Motley Cruz. I kind of knew his history, but I didn't know his full history. Like, I didn't realize, this is David Price that's been around. Like he was wrestling Ric Flair in St. Louis. Like, this guy's he's got this whole other lifetime as a wrestler before he started doing this hardcore stuff and the Motley Cruz stuff and all that. So that was fun to learn about, his history. And then of course, Tasha, I remember her starting out in, USWA is like Little Miss Rodeo or something.
Right.
And then I lost track of her, and all of a sudden she pops on here and she's this completely different image, and she's badass and everything. And what a combination they were. And again, kind of like you said about the pairing of Rocker and Vixen, 2 people who, if you knew them outside the ring, you're like, how do these 2 come together? But here they are, and it works.
Right. And Tasha, man, I think when she disappeared after Miss Rodeo or whatever, I think she went to Texas for a while. Maybe even to Puerto Rico, or maybe she'd been to Puerto Rico first. I think she went out to Texas for a while. And I want to say, man, somewhere in probably 94, maybe 94 probably, Motley had got a hold of Osceola and was running a show at the old car dealership in Osceola. And he'd ran one show, no Tasha. Next show we go to, there's Tasha. They're together, and and I had seen her as Miss Rodeo, but I didn't realize who she was. When I first met her in person the first time. Tasha Motley, they're a perfect pair, man. Their intensity. Tasha can talk. If you listen to this promo, Motley's a fucking technician in the ring. He can do everything from technical wrestling to everything. Rough on the fucking promos, though. I think Motley would even say that. Rough on the promos. That's why Tasha was out there. She did a lot of the talking. And, man, a hell of a pair, man. She accentuated Motley because she was mean as a fucking snake, Gene. I mean, in real life, Tasha's mean as hell, I'm going to be honest with you. She's
I've
mean.
heard some stories.
She's tough, and she takes wrestling serious the same way Motley did. She believed in kayfabe. And to be honest with you, at this time, leading up to this, I think this was the first time in probably 3 or 4 years Tasha hadn't been pregnant over the past 3 or 4 years. I think from probably about 94 or 5 to right at 98, man. Hell, I think she was pregnant with 3 kids over them few years.
Wow.
Her and Motley. So Tasha would wrestle some. She'd get pregnant. She'd wrestle till she couldn't wrestle no more. She'd stop wrestling. She'd have the baby. Soon as she got well, she would go right back in the ring, and it seemed like over about 4 years, every time you turned around, she was pregnant again and put that stop on her. And then this come around, and she was ready to roll at this time. I think she was happy because she hadn't been pregnant. She was on TV again. KAW was new. It was hot. I mean, you know, what can you say? Motley and Tasha are a huge fucking part of KAW.
Oh, yeah.
Truth be told,
go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, truth be told, if it wasn't for Motley, I may not have made it to KAW. I'm pretty sure Motley was the reason I ended up there. Motley and Tasha and Bull Payne had been running the Cruising for Pain thing for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And Bull Payne was going to be gone for a while, and I think that's where the idea to bring me in was, because Bull's gone, Motley needs a tag partner. I'm a big guy. I got the Hellraiser gimmick. I wasn't at Bull Payne's level at that time for sure, but I think that's how I kind of slid in there, was under that premise of Bull's going to be gone. We need another big guy here to work with Motley.
Right. And it was a perfect fit. You guys were a great team, and it was a good combination. Before we move away from this, my favorite Tasha Simone story, and I don't know when I'll get a chance to tell this again, so right now I feel like it's as good a time as any. So I was at a USWA house show in Tupelo in 95. Lawler and Jeff Jarrett was headlining it. This is after Jeff had, went to WWF, and he was coming back as Double J. Jesse James Armstrong was on the card. PG-13 against the Rock and Roll Express was on the card. Yeah. But also on the card was Miss Texas versus Tasha. And so I'm sitting in the front row with my little brother. My little brother was excited to go to one of his first live shows. And so we're sitting there. And at one point, Miss Texas snapmares Tasha over, pulls back with a chin lock, and unbeknownst to her or Tasha's left boob pops out of her top. And it's hanging there for a few moments before finally Jackie looks down and sees it, starts laughing, whispers in Tasha's ear, and she pulls, of course, she pulls her top back up. Well, but now they're both tickled. Right. This has been a heated match, and now Jackie can't stop laughing. So now Tasha, which is just totally out of character for her, she's starting to laugh. So she's trying to cover her face. And they finally kind of get things back together. And Tasha gets her down, and she's working Jackie over, trying to get some heat. She gets her in a chin lock. All of a sudden, it gets real quiet for a second. This guy stands up and goes, "Pop your titty out again." And he just keeps saying it over and over. And when he does, Jackie dies laughing. Tasha's trying her best not to laugh. And they just laugh through the whole rest of the match. They finally take it home a couple minutes later. But both of them leave the ring still laughing. But it was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. But it was so funny. It was so you could tell it was killing Tasha's soul to try not to laugh.
Right.
It was just too funny not to. And Jacqueline just was losing it from the word. As soon as she looked down and saw it out, she's like, and you see her lean down in Tasha's ear and she pulls it up. Yeah, that dude's like, "Pop your titty out again." And everybody in the whole building laughed. But anyway.
I wonder they didn't get a "pop your titty out" chant going, man.
I know, right?
Tasha, hey, look, Tasha and Miss Texas had some good matches against each other. Miss Texas, tough as fucking leather, man. Look, when I was training and had just got in the business, I used to go to the Coliseum every Monday night. And, man, I used to watch, at this time, Brian Christopher, he wrestled Miss Texas. It felt like every other fucking Monday night for some reason. But, man, he would just beat the shit out of her. He'd sling her around by the hair. He'd body slam her like he was trying to put her through the canvas. And she never, ever gave an inch. She was right back on his ass. That is one tough lady. And Tasha is, too. Tasha's a tough chick, too. That's a hell of a matchup.
Women that could hang with Miss Texas and give it back to her, and believably.
Right.
But yeah, over on the USWA podcast right now, Brian has just brought in Miss Simpson, Tony Adams. And there's been a couple weeks in a row where, like last week, Brian just whipped the shit out of Miss Texas with a freaking belt on TV.
Right.
It was just brutal. And
You
you're
never
like,
get away with that
there's
now.
some heat there or something. My God, like there was a little, it seemed like it was a little personal. But what it was is she ran up and smacked Brian across the chest with that belt. And you see it wash over his face. And he snatches that belt out of her hand and he just just beats the shit out of her. And then they show a clip from like that Monday night. He like slams the hell out of her in the ring. And Corey Michael, oh, come on, Brian. He's losing his mind. Which, speaking of Corey Macklin, David Jett better be glad when he was talking all this smack on TV that Corey Macklin didn't show up to one of these shows because, Corey was a badass. He whooped Coco Beware's ass a few years later. So he didn't want Corey coming,
right.
I'll be talking shit about TV5 over here. But anyway, before we head back to the ring after the break, Izzy High and Fabulous Rocker go head to head in the interview era. They're arguing over who will get the light heavyweight title shot against Danny B. And suddenly, Tommy Rogers of the Fantastic shows up, which is another guy that when he first popped up on the TV here, I'm like, holy shit, Tommy Rogers. Like, this guy's a hell of a worker.
Yeah, he's a guy that you can expect to see Sid show up on KAW. It's a big deal, but not really a shock. A lot of other guys, but I was the same way. I'm like, first time I seen Tommy walk in the dressing room, I'm like, oh shit, man, this is a little bit different dude here, a little bit different to be here at KAW.
Shit's gotten real, as they say. But so Tommy Rogers shows up and says that neither of these guys have ever seen a gym. And then Jamie Dundee shows up. There's a shot of there's Rocker and Izzy.
Hey, that's the body of the 90s right there. What are you talking about?
Damn right. And so Jamie Dundee shows up and says he has a solution to all this. And so he says he has his name along with the three other guys' names in a hat. And whoever David Jett pulls out, they should get the title shot. So Jett reaches in, pulls out a name, and wouldn't you know it, Dundee's name is drawn out. Rogers, Izzy, and Rocker, they all leave disgusted. And after Dundee leaves, Jett checks the other pieces of paper in the hat. All read Jamie Dundee except for one and one name only, and that read JCI.
Right.
What a fun segment, dude.
Dude, that was fucking hilarious, man. I mean, it's so simple and so stupid, but so damn effective, man. It was just, I mean, you can see Jamie doing it. I mean, that just sounds like something Jamie do in real fucking life. You know what I mean? It just great. I thought that was, because I done forgot all about that little segment, and I thought, man, when I seen it, I popped all over again for it, dude. I thought, man, that is fucking great. Jett was great. Jett was Jett truthfully was the guy who sold the whole thing when he started reading the names off. He's like, Jamie Dundee. He's like, hold on, who else was in here? Jamie Dundee? Hold on. JC Ice? Well, that's different. Man, Jett, I think it had just as much to do with Jett selling the segment at the end than anything else, man. But it was simple, straightforward. Comedy. It was comedy, but not stupid comedy. You know what I mean? It fit the segment. It fit where they were headed, man. I thought it was great, dude. Like I said, I popped all over again for it.
And it was fun, but it also, we asked earlier, how do you get heat? Well, that puts heat on Jamie because he screwed the other guys. So, it was a fun segment, but also got Jamie some heat in the process.
And he screwed one of his own guys, too.
Exactly. So here's some screenshots. So the next match is Izzy High versus Fabulous Rocker. And so you see Izzy's got Rocker hooked. I thought he was about to give him the old Samoa Joe muscle buster.
Buster. I thought the same thing, Gene. I think this may have been the predecessor to Joe's muscle buster, maybe.
Now here you see Vixen comes in, takes her top off, which immediately gets Izzy High's attention.
Hold on, Gene. Pop your titty out.
Exactly. That's at Mardi Gras. It's a wonder we didn't get that chant there. And of course, that allows Rocker to come in, cracks him over the head with the road sign, and we have a winner. Rocker gets the win, and fun little match there, man. Those guys worked well together. They worked each other a number of times throughout the run of KAW, and it was always entertaining.
Right, and I'm going to tell you something for everybody out there. Those fucking road signs there, they were legit road signs off of fucking signs. There was a lot of signs around Memphis that didn't have, there was a lot of posts with no signs. It's because we had them all at the show, man. And hey, them damn things hurt. They do not give, man, what's so fucking ever. And man, Izzy and Rocker had a bunch of great matches. You know, Izzy, before he came here, he was the American kickboxer. Right. And he had kind of already kind of built a name for himself as the American kickboxer. I mean, he'd been mentioned with names like Punk, Guerrero, some of these other guys during that time, working at IWA Mid-South. And he kind of had a name by the time he got here. I'd heard about the American kickboxer, but didn't know that Izzy was him until I met Izzy as Izzy High. And, you know, for him to come down here, and we talked about it on my podcast, Golden kind of wanting him to change from what he was. And, you know, originally the idea Golden wanted him to be a little. And
really?
That's the story. And Izzy told him, he said, what's going to happen when the first time I get on the mic and I don't have that Southern hillbilly accent? He said, it's going to kill it. And Golden thought about it. And I guess he said, yeah, you're probably right. So they landed on Weed, Izzy High, and Izzy had a lot of experience, a lot of higher level experience than a lot of us did. Rocker, I think working with Izzy helped develop Rocker to another level than he was at the time. He always could do it, but I think getting in there with Izzy and working the matches with Izzy, I think it elevated Rocker to another level.
Oh yeah, I agree 100%. Now, for like I said, a lot of people are going to be watching this or listening to this. Both are going to be learning about KAW for the first time now. So that's a couple of times now you've mentioned Weed. So that's Izzy High and Dr. Bud Ganja. Now tell us, Weed is an acronym. Tell us what Weed stands for in KAW speak.
Well, it was actually Dr. Bud, Izzy High, and if you remember, Motley Garcia Cruz, and Tasha was actually part of it too as Shroom. She was called Shroom for a while,
right.
so it was actually
called for that.
All of those, and it stood for Wrestling's Extreme Execution Daredevils.
There you go.
And man, look, they do this move called the gravity bomb. Motley they'll set a guy up on a table or across a couple chairs with a sign or something, lay the guy out on it, or even on the mat. And Motley would take Izzy in a powerbomb move, and when he got him up on his shoulders, Motley would take a step forward and take a back bump, which put Izzy splashing the guy. Cutting edge stuff. I don't know who came up with it. I don't know if Motley did, Izzy did, whether it was a collaboration. One of the coolest fucking moves I'd ever seen at the time, and they called it the gravity bomb, or the gravity bomb is what they called it.
And did anybody end up stealing that? Because I remember when I first saw them do it, I'm like, all right, well, you'll see somebody stealing that here in the next couple of years. I kept expecting to see it to turn up on TNA a couple of years later, or eventually in Ring of Honor, but I don't think anybody tried that, surprisingly enough.
I don't either, man. Now that you say it, I don't remember. Matter of fact, I don't think I've ever seen anyone do it but them.
Which is pretty wild, but absolutely, it was very innovative for the time, as was a lot of things that went on here.
And they would cut promos, Gene. They cut promos like it'd show them getting out of the van, and when they opened the door, the van would just be rolling with smoke. And when I say for a shoot smoke, that was all legit weed smoke, man.
There was no fog machine in the van, right? There was.
oh no, man! That damn van, that was a hot box, man.
Oh, forgive me, folks. I'm trying to keep from coughing here. So the next match was a non-title match. The KAW Tag Team Champions, the Littles that you just mentioned, Itty and Bitty Little, along with their valet / cousin sister, Anita Little. How's that, folks? And along with Mongo as well. They were going to be taking on the team of Old School, which was kind of a faction there of a few different guys. But in this instance, it's Steven Dunn and Wolfie D tagging up to take on the Littles. But for those, like I say, for people who haven't seen KAW, kind of describe the littles for people. I think we know where you said earlier that Deliverance had a lot to do with KAW. I think we know where it influenced it specifically.
Yeah, I mean, that's really all you got to do is go watch Deliverance and then go watch the KAW and watch the Littles. I mean, it's pretty much nail on the head of Deliverance. I mean, that was the whole idea. And, man, the guys were good at it. You know, here's the thing. We'd had hillbillies. We've always had hillbilly gimmicks around the Memphis Mid-South area. I think wrestling's probably always had hillbilly gimmicks in it, probably from day one. But these hillbillies were last house on the left kind of type hillbillies. You know what I mean? Exactly. This was a little bit different. It wasn't your happy, do-si-do, whiskey jug drinking hillbillies. These were, like Benny said, he got a pretty mouth and he'd make that pig sound, you know.
Yeah, I mean, they weren't subtle about it. Like Buster's saying, I mean, they spelled this shit out for you in their promos. Like, they weren't coming out to don't go messing with a country boy and square dancing. Like, they were basically telling you that they were planning on coming out there and, you know, mouth fucking you or whatever they could make happen. And the most fun about it all, they're baby faces for the most part.
Right. When you come out with the Littles, man, you better watch your booty holes. All I can say, man. There ain't no telling what these little hillbillies are going to try to do to you, man.
Exactly. So this was a wild match with, you know, weapons and shenanigans throughout. And eventually, so let's take a look at a couple of screenshots of this. There's Anita and Mongo there on the outside. And then you see the screenshots are a little unclear, but we can get the gist of it there. Wolfie's about to pedigree one of the Littles there. And Stephen Dunn's working him over in the corner on the other side. Oh, that's the next match. We jumped ahead. But anyway, so eventually the match is won by Stephen Dunn and Wolfie D. And, you know, and we talked about this earlier. At the time, you know, at 22 years old, you know, I enjoyed this hardcore style and I enjoyed it in ECW. But as I'm sitting there watching the show in 2024, I'm just like, man, these guys are called old school, but like, how can they get any heat here? We're just I mean, the bell rings and we're immediately into a four-way with weapons. Like,
right.
I don't know how this is going to be sustainable, but you know, we shall see. And of course, just like we learned with ECW, ultimately it wasn't. It was fun for a few years, and eventually you had to. You can't top yourself, you know, like the old Cornette things. Like, you know, it's like following a shooting with a stabbing, you know. And right. I know a lot of times, like over the years, I've done commentary for like some of these deathmatch shows and everything, and they do these tournaments. And the first match of the tournament, the opening match of the night, the first thing anybody saw would be a, you know, barbed wire light tube exploding something or other. And it's like,
right,
that was the first match. Where do we go from here? And by the time you got to the finals, they've seen 1,000 light tubes busted. Everybody's bled. And none of it means, because that first light tube the night gets busted, everybody goes, oh, shit. And by the time they bust the 1,000th one at the end of the night, everybody's just like,
come on, man. Getting glass in my eyes and all kind of shit, man.
So, you know, I think we eventually, you know, I remember talking to Terry when I interviewed him, and Terry said, in retrospect, you know, that he felt like, you know, at the time he had to take the offer and do the developmental and become Memphis Championship Wrestling. That he, you know, he said that looking back on it, that he feels like they could have had more longevity if they'd have stuck with KAW and kept the, you know, the business model they had. And I think on some levels that may be true. They probably would have had more longevity than maybe MCW had, but I don't think this hardcore style was sustainable for a long time.
Well,
maybe I'm wrong.
Here's the thing, Gene. You know, honestly, the music and the no rules, you said for a couple years, but honestly, it was really a short span because, like I said, you couldn't get heat. And I remember one night Golden coming back, or maybe Golden coming back from watching most of the show or something, and he just walks through the dressing room, kind of looks at everybody, and it's like, can anybody get any heat? And we kind of spoke up and said, man, it's how do you get heat? There's no rules. Alki literally just drinks his beer in the corner and looks at you. If I've got my foot over a dude's throat over the rope choking him, if there ain't no laws to break, how are you a criminal? You know what I mean? There really is no baby faces and heels when you go to that level. And that's when it started changing. The music too. The music was great on TV at first. But if you noticed when it got towards the end of KAW, probably the last 3-4 months before it switched over, maybe even a little longer than that, I'm pretty sure we done cut the music out. We definitely cut the music out on the house shows during the matches, and I'm pretty sure that they had already cut the music out on the TV, because that's another thing. Even on TV, people watch wrestling, people that are wrestling fans, they want to hear them bumps. They want to hear the sound of that mat. That's the soundtrack of pro wrestling. And when you disguise that with the music being so loud, to me, you take an aspect of what makes wrestling, what's part of the magic away. When the people
and they want to hear the crowd reaction as well.
Exactly, man. You can't look with the music playing, and say you do a spot that gets a good reaction. I mean, you can't hear the crowd either. Yep. And they had cut that out. And so by the time MCW come along, I 100% believe KAW had changed dramatically by then. We still had all the weapons, and it was still no rules. The only difference was when you was a heel and you was doing certain shit to the baby faces, Alki would actually get down and count. He would count you 5. Just started doing normal referee shit. And once that happened, we were able to get heat. It was just like any other. We had weapons, but once Alki started look, he didn't have to do nothing but admonish you for doing something, and it puts that idea in the fan's head was, oh shit, these are the bad guys right here. There's rules, there's criminals. You can't be a criminal if there's no rules to break. I 100%, my opinion is, if he hadn't have took the deal, which you can't blame Golden, any of us would have done it. You can't pass up that money and that opportunity to be a part of the WWF at that level. You cannot take nothing. I would have done the same thing, but I think all of us boys, we were hoping some of us would get some deals, but truthfully, I think most of us knew. I'd been at USWA in '97 before it shut down. I'd been some other places, so I kind of knew what happened when the WWE boys show up. You know, because we were told we can do whatever we want to with them. We can beat them every night of the week if we want to. We got the whole spiel. Golden and them took us to the house, brought all the boys to his house, and gave us the whole rundown, the spiel. Of course, some of us knew that, hey, that shit's going to change when they got here, and it did. Immediately when they got here, we were putting all them over, and slowly it started weeding all the guys that made KAW popular, all the homegrown guys. If you look around at the end, it probably wasn't 6 months, 8 months into 2000. You had 7 left there. You had Bitty Little under a mask. I think Hollywood was still there. Rocker, I think everybody else was gone. I was gone. Danny B was gone. Ron was gone. Motley was gone. All the main guys were gone, but I do believe if we would have stayed KAW, I think, honestly, I don't know if we'd be in business now, but I would be willing to bet you we would have stayed in business till 2010. We would have definitely took over Memphis because we were already doing it. Here's the thing. Right before the switchover, we went to Jonesboro and done a show at the Convocation Center that was like a $10,000 house. We had like 1,000 paying customers there, and that's back in '99, and it was $10 a ticket then. So you're talking about a $10,000 house in Jonesboro. Not even Lawler and them, not even USWA had done that in years and years and years. I don't even know how long it had been since they done that. We got to where every town we would go to. When we first started working in New Bern, Tennessee for KAW, a lot of towns for KAW. When I first got there, some of these shows we would go to, there'd be 10, 14 people. And we're just killing ourselves. We're putting on the same show in front of these 10, 14 people. that we would have put if it was 500 there. But I think it had a lot to do with getting rid of the music, getting some, at least the appearance that there was some rules. So fans could understand it, Here's the thing. Most people at that time were still conditioned to traditional Memphis wrestling, Channel 5 wrestling. This was something totally different. A lot of people not even had really caught on to it yet. But by the time the switchover came, we should have stayed KAW. Here's the thing. I think if they would have just kept the KAW name and we would have used the WWE guys more in tune with our guys, kind of used each other, used them to elevate us and use us to get them over too and help them learn how to work. I think it would have had a longer life if, even with the developmental deal, if it would have stayed kick-ass wrestling.
Well, I mean, that's part of what Terry was saying. A lot of the issue was like they start dictating to him, all right, well, you need to push this person, you need to do this, but this person, you need to do that. And then so you start building these angles, and then all of a sudden, oh, hey, so-and-so is not coming. We're sending him somewhere else. And now you got this angle, or they're the champion, or whatever the case may be. And now they're just freaking gone.
Same deal with every developmental deal.
Exactly.
They're going to do what they want to do. We've heard Cornette say the same thing.
Cornette, Randy had to deal with that in Memphis. All
snatch guys in and out, main guys that's right in the middle of your hottest angles, your money drawing angles. They're there one week and gone the next. It's hard to do how do you, I would assume if it was me, I'd get frustrated with even trying to come up with ideas and good angles because, you have that happen to you enough. It's like, well, what the fuck? We're just waiting on the other shoe to drop. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're going to get 3/4 of the way through this, and when it comes time to really draw money off of this angle, they're going to do something. They're going to make us do something different, or they're going to snatch one of the guys. It had to have been a headache for Terry.
Oh, yeah.
And here's the thing. Terry hadn't worked. He was just like the rest of us. He owned KAW. Golden could get shit going, could push it through, could get sponsors. He can do it to this day still. One of the very greatest fucking businessmen in pro wrestling or just real life ever. He's a hell of a businessman. But this was the first time he had ever had that kind of responsibility on his back, I would be willing to bet too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So, all right, we're going to try to push through this review and get this part done. So match number 4, we got a tag match, Terry Golden and Hollywood versus Motley Cruz and Tasha. So this is a wild match here. We got a clip. Let's check out just a little bit of this match. It's a lot of fun.
Terry Golden comes in, gets ripped apart by that garbage can right off the bat. Mixed tag action. Motley Cruz, Golden, and Hollywood. Big clothesline takes Motley Cruz. He had a few other priorities and just kind of handed the belt to Motley. Tasha is in against Golden. Golden takes a weapon, smacks on top of her head for a Bronco Buster. Grabs Tasha by the hair. He put that power driver on her last pick. Ow! Slams her down to the mat. Picks up Hollywood. Has Hollywood up high. Bounces him off the rope. Slams him down into Tasha. Has Hollywood up for a power driver. Tasha, ooh, wow. Tasha going for the top rope. Spike, power driver on Hollywood. They snapped his neck. Both of them are out of it. They're going to pin Hollywood. Count of 1, 2, 3. This match is over. We'll be back with Danny B defending the light heavyweight title against Jamie Dundee. That's coming up next.
So there we go. Like we said, when it comes time, Terry sells. Terry puts people over. But I mean, this is just a little, sample of KAW there. That match starts. The very first thing that happens in this match
Garbage can
to the head.
And I'll tell you something, Gene, if you go back and you see where Tasha was down in the middle and Golden picked Hollywood up and kind of slingshotted him off the rope, spun him around, and he did the leg drops, the ass bump. Mm-hmm. If you go back and look at that, Hollywood was young in the business. When I say young, man, maybe 2 months, maybe at this time, and I could be a little bit off, but when I say young, Hollywood was brought in and thrown immediately in with the lines. I mean, he was thrown right in there. But if you go back and you watch that and watch the aftermath, Hollywood got hurt when he hit the mat with that ass bump. None of us realized it at the time, but Hollywood got hurt pretty bad that night. If you watch it, when he hits, watch after that. If you notice, Hollywood don't do a lot. He's laying on the mat. He he can't, it ain't that he can't get up. Golden tries to get him up a time or two and can't really get him moving. Tasha does the same thing. The only time he gets up is when Motley gets him up for the spike pile driver.
Whew.
But Holly, that way, if you watch it, that was a rough bump. And here's the thing. I don't think people realize how hard that fucking KAW ring was. No wood. If I remember right, there was no wood whatsoever on that ring. It was all metal, and even the flooring. It was the railing rafters were run like almost checkerboard, and it was sheet metal on top of that. No wood. It was fucking sheet metal, man. Even when guys used to tote that shit, you had to be careful with it because you know how that shit is. It'd be rusty and shit. Slice your hands up. But it was one of the hardest until you got used to bumping in it. It's a hard ring. And man, when you watch Hollywood take it, when his ass hits, you can tell right then it hurt him. I think it compressed his spine, you know.
Oh God. That's rough, dude. So yeah, and that's why, you know, I was excited to have you on here for this, because that's insight that, you know, how you gonna know unless you just know. So that's cool that you're able to kind of clue us into some stuff like that we wouldn't know.
Well, here's the thing. Everybody talks about how hard the WWE rings are. And when the developmental deal first happened, that's the first thing we did was switch to a WWE ring. And it is hard, but I can promise you this, that fucking KAW ring there was no give in it that I remember whatsoever. It might as well have been a boxing ring.
Damn, I've been in a few of those. Those suck.
Hey, you might as well be bumping on the concrete.
Exactly.
Hey guys, this is Wolfie D from PG-13. Check out my podcast, Live and in Color with Wolfie D, every Monday at noon. We're talking Memphis, we're talking ECW, WCW, WWF, everywhere that I've been. We even have some great guests, some Hall of Famers on the show with us. Every Monday at noon, Live and in Color with Wolfie D.
Hey, it's Bob Smith, and guess what? The Outdated Wrestling Hour is now part of the Wrestlecopia Podcast Network. But hey, no fear, you're still going to hear the unique guests, comedy, music, authors, journalists, funny people. Who knows who's going to end up on the Outdated Wrestling Hour? Remember, it's all new and all old. So check it out in the Wrestlecopia Podcast Network and wherever you get your podcasts. Listen if you know what's good for you.
So our TV main event is a KAW light heavyweight title match. Danny B. Good versus Jamie Dundee with Brickhouse Brown. This is something I always loved about Danny B. I remember meeting him early, prior to the KAW days. Is you could look at the poster and you knew which way Danny was working, because when he was a heel, he was Danny B. Bad, and when he was a babyface, he was Danny B. Good, which always popped me. I always loved that. But anyway, Jamie's got Brickhouse with him. They're all part of the old school crew, I assume. And so this is a fun match. Danny B looks great in this match. He dominates pretty much most of the match. Jamie gives him pretty much the entire match. And then back to what we were talking about earlier about there's no rules. Brickhouse, who's at ringside, just comes in the ring with a freaking bar chair, hits Danny B with it a couple times, and now Dundee's your new light heavyweight champion. And so I've always been accused of being, since I was a little kid, of being way too logical. You know, that's why I was never a fan of like Star Wars movies and even horror movies and stuff, because I was no fun to watch them with, because I picked the shit apart. I'm like, why would they do that? That makes no sense. That's stupid.
I'm a giant fan of horror movies, but I've never ever got the Star Wars thing. Yeah. Even as a kid, man, it just never appealed to me for some reason, man. I watched them, but they just really never appealed to me. I never got the Star Wars thing.
So from a logic perspective, as I watch this and that happens, I'm like, well, why did Brickhouse watch Danny B whip Jamie's ass for 4 minutes? Like, if this is legal, why didn't, as soon as the bell rang, why didn't Brickhouse come in?
I can tell you why, Gene. I can tell you right now why. You know why? Because Brickhouse was out on the fucking deck at the back of Mardi Gras, probably smoking a joint, man. That's why. He was probably supposed to have been there 2 minutes earlier, dude. Who knows, man?
But you know, that kind of thing, you look at it and you're like, well, okay, there's no rules. These guys have a faction, you know, Wolfie and Stephen Dunn and all these people. Like, well, why wouldn't you just have your faction just all come out together and you all just beat the shit out of your opponent? You always got them outnumbered. Just beat the shit out of your opponent every time. Like, why wasn't all of them out there earlier to help Wolfie and Stephen Dunn? And that, to me, is the downside of the whole no rules thing, is that there's so many things that you do, because it's wrestling. That's what you do. That just kind of falls apart. It doesn't. Yeah, it falls apart if you try to apply logic to it. Like, well, why wouldn't you just do that? But because it's wrestling, because they weren't supposed to. I thought when you said, I know why, I thought you were about to say, because it wasn't booked that way, dummy.
No, he was out. I'm pretty sure. Look, there ain't no telling how many times run-ins were a little late or something, just because guys wasn't where they were supposed to be. They were somewhere else in a corner doing something they might not have been supposed to be doing, or should have been paying attention to the match. And here's a little insight to this. You watch Jamie and Danny. These guys had a little bit of real heat. Okay. All right, you know Jamie. It's no secret at this time, Jamie was a fucking grenade. I mean, he was partying hard, drinking from the time he got there to the time he left. There's no telling what else he might have been doing. And you know Jamie, no filter. So there had been some issues with Jamie. You know Jamie, especially at this time, he not shy to throw the N-word around here and there.
Right.
And so there was a little bit of heat between these two guys. And it didn't come to a head here, but probably 3 or 4 months later, we were in Martin, Tennessee at Cheers, and Jamie was being Jamie. He was lit up, just talking, no filter, and him and Danny had some words. What it was, Jamie had used the N-word and was saying some derogatory shit, and Danny B, I guess, had finally got fed up on it. Yeah. So Danny B finally told him, I'm sick of your shit, Jamie. You know, we kind of had to get them apart. No, they never got into a real fight, but, you know, it's one of them deals where after this happened, though, I think Jamie, he respected Danny B a lot more after that situation, because it come close, man. It come really close. And truthfully, Jamie was just being Jamie. Jamie was a fucking star at this time. And he had no filter, and he was gassed to the gills on anything he could probably get. Just being Jamie Dundee. I don't know that Jamie really meant nothing super personal, but I mean, you got to understand, if I was Danny, I'd get sick of hearing that shit every time I turned around. N-word this, N-word that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like I say, I worked a bunch of shows with Danny back in this era, before and after, and Danny B's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet, but he wasn't about any bullshit. Like, Danny wasn't going to stand back and get fucked with or be disrespected. You know, he didn't care how big a star he was. Danny, I mean, I can see that. I can totally see that. I'm surprised it didn't turn into a fight.
Well, dude, we had to. I mean, there was a whole dressing room full of guys that kind of got in the middle of these two, and Danny was pissed, man. Danny had just had enough, and I'm glad he did, because, I mean, you know how shit is in real life. Motherfuckers gonna push your buttons until they know they can't push your buttons anymore. Mm-hmm. And after that, I don't think that there was another issue between those two guys. I may be wrong, but after that, once Danny B let Jamie know that, hey, I'm sick of the bullshit. I don't feel like hearing that shit all the time. Go talk that shit. I don't give a shit what you say at home or wherever else, but I'm sick of hearing this bullshit. And that's really all it was to it. Like I said, there was no physical. They never traded blows or nothing, but it was a situation where it earned some mutual respect between the two, because they went on to work together after that. You know, It didn't end there, but there was already a little tinge of heat here, I'm sure, because that was just common Jamie talk at the time. Brickhouse had been around Jamie so much. Brickhouse didn't even really pay him no attention. He didn't even really. Brickhouse, that's just little Dundee. But Danny, I mean, this was, I guess it was probably his first time around Jamie on a regular basis like that, and just wasn't used to that bullshit. And once he stood up for himself, shit was smooth after that, from what I remember.
But back in those days, and far beyond, earlier than these days, obviously, guys were professional enough that no matter how much heat there was or any issues they had, if the booker said get in there and work tonight, guys could go in there and work, and they put all that shit aside, and you wouldn't know it. You can watch matches now and go back and see matches from 70s, 80s, 90s, and you hear these stories like, oh, those guys freaking hated each other, but you watch the matches and you can't tell. But like nowadays, if somebody said something in the dressing room that somebody didn't like, especially to that level of like the N-word or something, well, fuck, they'd be banned from wrestling, and it'd be a whole big to-do on Facebook and shit. They couldn't even be booked on the same show, much less in the work together in the ring or anything. So, it's just a different time in the world, but a different time in the business for sure.
And here's the thing, Gene. I'm a firm believer in freedom of speech. I think anybody truthfully ought to be able to say what the fuck they want to, because that is one of the rights that people has died to give us as Americans, is that we ought to be able to say what we want. But that don't mean that the next motherfucker ain't got the right to punch you in your fucking face if you say the wrong shit that they don't like or they trigger you. I think it should be an open forum like that. I mean, you got the guts to say it, have the guts to handle the repercussions if they come. Exactly. You know what I mean?
I agree 100%. You have freedom of speech, but you also get the freedom to get that ass whooped if somebody don't like it and they're big enough to handle it. Absolutely. I back that 100%. So at the end of this match, Dundee's the new champ, and after the match, the rest of the light heavyweights band together. So that's Izzy, Rocker, and Tommy Rogers. They all come in the ring and they bump Jamie around for a minute, clearing house. Now, it's fun. I've noticed watching some of these old KAW shows, and like I said, they were kind of editing themselves. Some of the editing gets kind of odd because, so we've just saw Tommy Rogers come out there and help Rocker and Izzy beat up Dundee. But the very next thing we see is this clip.
I want to get the interview with Sid, and POB guys are all, who's he talking to?
Goes all the way to the top. What do you say, man? Are you in the out? Come on, it's not hard. He's there.
Who, in or out of what? Can I please break through here for a second? Here's the man, Sid. What is going on over here?
I'm going to tell you something. See, I've overheard a little bit of the little conversations, and it's come to bother me a little bit. So you got to understand something. When you're running a family, an organization like what I have right here, I can't waste my time on little bitty things called the littles. So what I did, see, because these guys are so stupid that you actually could beat them down to where they're bleeding and they can't feel anything else, but they won't stop because it's just that stupid. So I was just a little bit smarter, so I went out and I got me a technical team. See, there's one thing you guys will feel. You will feel fatigue, and fatigue makes cowards out of everyone. This, you're next. That's right. Stand team. Yes. Part of the PLC. Little, the tag titles, we might as well pouch them up. They're going to be ours.
So Tommy's after the light heavyweight title. Now we cut to him being drafted into the POB. Now they're going after the tag team title. So I think, Okay, that could be an editing snafu. Then again, it could just be K.A.W. because we're just kind of all over the place. But here's where I think
2 words for you, Gene. That's a perfect example. And if you show the last few little, at the end of the K.A.W. show, especially early on, they had this compilation of promos, little snid bits. Pulp Fiction. That's what I think that's Pulp Fiction. I think there's where you see the Pulp Fiction influence on KAWs and shit like that.
I mean, I've had people argue with me that like, no, KAW wasn't anything like ECW. I'm like, bullshit. That montage at the end of the show is straight off of ECW. They used the Pulp Fiction music on ECW for the montage. Like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but clearly it's one effect of the other. But so I'm thinking, all right, well, that could have been an editing issue, or it could have just been, we're all over the place. But then we cut to the closing montage. Danny B, who just lost the light heavyweight title, is holding the belt, referencing Dundee wanting another match next week. Then we cut to Tommy Rogers referencing the drawing from earlier in the show, teasing whether or not he's going to support Dundee as if the main event hasn't even happened yet. Then we cut to the Littles, whose promo really wasn't specific enough to find any issues with it. But it's just, one of those things where it's like, okay, clearly something didn't match up on the editing. Not a big deal, but it's just kind of fun.
The Littles went out there, and I felt like they were just going to touch on everybody they might have an issue with, man.
Exactly.
But yeah, I feel like it was just the Pulp Fiction influence that I feel like that's just part of KAW. And look, we've all thought the same shit. When this shit originally aired, I'm sure I thought the same fucking thing was, that there really wasn't a lot of continuity there between those promos and the shit we just saw. But KAW, I guess that's all you can say, man. It's KAW, man.
I say that all the time. Like, me and Ray Russell do this 1985, Memphis review show, and we'll talk about things that don't exactly make sense. And Ray's like, what's up with that? I'll just go Memphis, and then skip to 93. Me and Richard and Josh covering the USWA shows, and there's odd shit that happens on there, and just like Memphis, it just happens. It has how it is, but it ain't stopping nobody from watching, And actually, just kind of sometimes when the show ends and you're kind of scratching your head, you're just kind of like, well, fuck, I got to see where that goes next week because he just won the title. They're acting like it didn't happen. So did it happen? Are we going to start the show out next week and Danny B still champ? Or was that a dream? I don't know. You can never tell with this show. So
Jane, as fucked up as everybody used to be at KAW, man, they could have forgotten they had those matches, man. Hey, but at 11:30 at night, it's like, all right, we're going to cut some pre-tapes for the show, man. I mean, exactly. you just never know. And like I said, I want to say at this time, I don't know if Golden and them had got the TV cameras and stuff, and Jet was fully the guy producing everything. Because like I said, I want to say the guy they used it first, man, for some reason, Bob Ryder's what's coming to my head, but I could be wrong about that. But when I first went to work there, they had a production company that would come out, film the show, put it together, and get it to Golden and them before Jet took over. And I feel like Golden and them buying their own equipment and stuff, and Jet being the guy that done everything, was a part of every aspect of it from start to finish, from ideas to creative to what we're going to do, where it's going to be in the show, formatted and everything, and then producing it and editing it at the end. I feel like if you watch some shows later on, once Jet got a hold of it, I feel like there was a little bit more continuity in the episodes than there was early on, because you don't know that those guys, when they got through, suppose there was 120 seconds they needed more to fill. Maybe they just throw those fucking promos, the production guy, maybe he just throwed them in at the end. I don't know that nobody knows. That'd be a Golden question or a David Jet question, maybe.
Because if it was still the other production company, they don't know shit about the storylines or none of that. They're just like, hey, we got to fill time at the end of this. We got these promos. Throw them in there.
Yeah, we got 2 minutes.
These are guys that were on the show.
Yeah, we got 2 minutes to fill. Just fill it with this. Put the Pulp Fiction music to it and fill it out with this and let it go. And I mean, who knows, man? Like I said, that would be a Golden or a Jet thing. I mean, there was a lot of things I popped on. We've done mentioned the Sid, the F-bomb. Man, like me and you talked before we went on the air a little bit about it, and it is a little shocking now hearing it, which at the time, I mean, nobody thought nothing about it. Nobody. The TV station let it go.
No, I mean, it went through on UPN.
That's what I'm saying, man.
So, yeah, I mean, it was a different time in so many ways. But there's not a lot of KAW on YouTube because, like I say, all that music's problematic in posting it. If you go to here on this channel, here on the Retro Wrestling Archive, there's a playlist of KAW stuff I've uploaded. Then I've just made a playlist of other people's stuff. I think some of it may even be from your channel. I know you had some on there at one time, and I think you took some of it off, maybe.
Yeah, I pulled all the Memphis, all the KAW, all the Burt Prentice, not because all of it was copywritten, more because I kept getting hit with reused content, and basically so many other people had already put it on. And truthfully, I think I might have been, somebody might have been reporting me too.
They had to have,
because I mean, I've seen people put the same footage on since then, and they don't seem to have no issue, but they kept hitting me, and I finally decided, fuck it, man, I'm just going to pull it all off. Anything like that might give me a reuse content. And I'm kind of glad I did now because I started doing some reactions. And I've got all these fucking matches from all over the place that now are already pre-packaged for me to just come back. Like you do whole shows.
Right.
I don't want to fuck with that. I would rather pick out segments. You know what I mean?
I got you.
I really like the format of being on 20, 30 minutes, doing a reaction and being done with it, you know, and on to the next one. So I'm kind of glad I did. And I'm kind of glad that I'd already, it sucked at the time, but like I said, all these segments are already pre-packaged, just waiting on me to go back, pull them out, and use them for new stuff.
Absolutely. Well, that's cool. But folks, like I say, if you had fun with this episode, there is some more KAW up there. I'm hoping there's going to be more KAW make its way to YouTube. I'm sure somebody's got a lot more of this out there than what I can find.
Here's the thing. The masters of KAW should be making their way to me somewhere here in the near future. And I've got to figure out what to do with the music. But I'm going to do something with them. Golden wants them out there. He wants something done with them. Truthfully, I'm thinking about putting them on Saturday mornings.
Yeah.
And that's starting with the first episode and putting them on Saturday mornings just as they played at 11 o'clock and just see how they do against all the other wrestling out there right now, you know?
Hell yeah. That would be awesome, man.
But like you said, it's a bitch getting by all the music, man. When the matches have the music in it, I can do away with the intros. But, man, It's hard when the matches have the music in it, man.
Oh, yeah, because then now you're fucking with the commentary and all. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I mean, you definitely can't put it on a channel that you're trying to monetize because that shit ain't gonna work at all. I mean, I've got all that 80s Memphis, and I've got pretty much every bit of USWA I can find on my channel, and I've never been able to monetize this channel just from. Nobody can claim the USWA content because nobody really owns it because nobody knows who owns the USWA. But all the goddamn music they used on there, right. You can go back and take some of it out. Then when you get into the USWA era, then they got clips from WWE that I'll put a video up, and fucking 4 months later, all of a sudden I get an alert when I'm at work and I get an email. There's been a copyright claim on 33 seconds of this episode that you uploaded 8 months ago. I'm like, how the hell does it find this 8 months later?
Yeah, I'm with you on that, man. It's hard, dude. It's hard. I'm like you. If I do put the KAW stuff on like that, I think I'm going to start another channel just for that. so it don't mess with my channel that I've got, because I don't make no fucking money off of YouTube. I don't even know why I give a shit, man, because I don't make enough fucking money for it to matter.
Even if you're only going to be doing 2 or 3, 4 podcasts in the next little while, you've got a huge backlog of people you've spoke to. My goodness, you have talked to all kinds of people, had all kinds of great conversations. Many of them are friends of mine, people I know. And I even managed to learn things about people that I've known for years through the course of conversations you've had, which is really cool. So tell everybody how to find you on YouTube and Facebook and how they can look you up and check some of this stuff out.
You can see it right behind my head. Buster H.R. Johnson on YouTube. That's my YouTube channel. Go there. Subscribe to my channel. I've got all kind of content. There's a lot of wrestling on there. A lot of local. It's all local wrestling now from around the Memphis Mid-South area. A lot of content. I've got the podcast. Hell, I think I've done 140.
Wow.
A podcast in a little over a year. Like I said, I just started doing some reaction videos and reviews of videos. But hey, Buster H.R. Johnson on YouTube, Buster H.R. Johnson on Facebook, Buster H.R. Johnson on TikTok, and Buster H.R. Johnson on Twitter, X, whatever the fuck it is now, man. You type in Buster Johnson, Buster H.R. Johnson, you can pretty well find me on that's all the social media I'm on.
There's not 6 other Buster H.R. Johnsons that's going to pop up. He's the one.
I'm the one, man. and dude, I appreciate you bringing me on, man. Like I said, I enjoy this, and hey, I'm game for coming back anytime.
Hi, this is Mike Needham, host of the Reckless Abandon Podcast with Mike Needham. We invite you to jump on your favorite podcast platform and search for the Reckless Abandon Podcast and give us a listen. I'm sometimes joined by a part-time podcaster, part-time co-host, and full-time wife, Tiffany Nicole. And when you get the wife on there, sometimes that can lead to some very interesting conversation. We talk wrestling, we talk pop culture, we talk local events in West Tennessee, local happenings in West Tennessee, and a ton of other stuff. I would like to tell you that this is a show about nothing, but Seinfeld already has that copyrighted, so I cannot tell you that our podcast is a show about nothing. But be sure to check out the Reckless Abandon Podcast. Find us on Facebook. Also, look up the Microgroup Podcasting family on Facebook and see some of our other podcasts we have out there. Until next time, make good choices, and always remember, no dollar, no dice.
This is Wrestling Nostalgia, the podcast that dives into wrestling history. Hey, wrestling fans, I'm Dave Dynasty, and if you enjoy podcasts that are knowledgeable and history-driven, then Wrestling Nostalgia is for you. With great guests and fun interviews, there are over 200 episodes in our archives. We chat with several first-time guests and often cover topics not discussed on other podcasts. Look up Wrestling Nostalgia on your favorite podcast platform and visit all of our links at linktree/WrestlePod. That is linktr.ee/RASSLEPOD. And remember, wherever you go, whatever you do, be good, be safe, and keep on growing.